Hey everyone. Today we're going to start our first of, I guess, many video lectures that we're going to have that I'll post on Google Classroom. Obviously, since we're not going to be in school for the foreseeable future, possibly for the rest of the school year, I will post these videos on here, kind of going through the PowerPoint notes to kind of introduce you guys to some new topics. So, because we're not in the classroom and I'm not giving you the fill in the blanks PowerPoint packets like I normally do. I might be going through these notes, I guess, a little bit faster than maybe we normally would in class. However, because it's a video, you can pause it and go through it at your own leisure. I will still attach the fill in the blank PowerPoint packets in case those do help you out while you are watching this video, so you can have that to go along with as well. But prior to spring break, if you remember, we talked about Renaissance. Okay, we did the introduction to the Renaissance, which I'll also post that PowerPoint on Google Classrooms. You can kind of reacclimate yourself with that information. Today, we're going to get to Renaissance art. And whenever we think of the Renaissance, a lot of times the artwork will be one of the first thoughts that comes to mind. Okay, so if we were to compare the medieval times, artwork versus Renaissance artwork, you can kind of see the differences here. So if you take a look at the painting on the left, and keep in mind, remember, we talked about how during the Renaissance, remember the Renaissance occurs in Italy because they have this influx of wealth. Because of this influx of wealth, people are able to have different occupations. We're going to have full-time professional painters now. And you can see the difference between that here with the Renaissance artwork compared to the medieval artwork, whereas the medieval artwork, if you were to look at it, definitely looks flat, looks dull, maybe not as detailed as the Renaissance artwork here, which you can see this woman holding this, I don't know, a ferret looking thing. But you can see the details here. You can see with the woman's face, it looks symmetrical. It looks three-dimensional compared to the medieval one. Obviously, you can see details in the ferret's arm here with the muscle tone, the details in the woman's clothing. So again, overall, just more detailed and more realistic looking. And that's what we're going to kind of see here. So when we go to do some work, I'm going to have a web quest on here for you all to complete as well. There are a couple things we need to focus on. One, that is Renaissance values, Renaissance artwork values, which you can see right here. I'll have those titled here at the top so you know the difference, and also Renaissance characteristics as well. So let's talk about the values first. The first value would be individualism. And just like it sounds, and make sure that everyone looks like their own individual. He'll emphasize the uniqueness of everyone's face and facial expressions. Each person looks like their own individual identity, has their own personality. Whereas in the medieval paintings or paintings prior to that, mostly, people would look kind of similar. What we're trying to do here is show that each person is different. So that would be individualism. Each person looks different from everyone else. The second value would be humanism. This one is extremely important because not only is it a Renaissance art value, but it's just also a Renaissance value, period. We talked about humanism with Leonardo da Vinci. Remember, humanism is showing a well-rounded person. Okay, so Leonardo da Vinci was the perfect example of that. He was a professional painter, sculptor, architect, mathematician, philosopher. So again, being a well-rounded person is showing humanism. So in a painting, if you see people that are being well-rounded, maybe they're reading in the painting, that would be showing a Renaissance value of humanism. The final value we'll talk about is secularism. We also talked about this in our first Renaissance intro PowerPoint way back when, but secularism, remember, means life is moving away from the church. So displaying worldly things not regarded as religious or sacred. So this does not mean, and again, take this with a grain of salt, this does not mean that there are no religious paintings in the Renaissance era because that is completely false. However, again, if it shows that people are moving away from the church or if it has nothing to do with religion or the church, then it would be a secular painting. Okay. So those are the Renaissance values: individualism, humanism, and secularism. Let's talk about now Renaissance characteristics that you'll see in a painting. Again, difference between values and characteristics. Keep that in mind. So the first one will be balance and proportion. again, the whole point of this is to show artwork, uh, make it more realistic, show all things in their proper size. Like for example, if you were to paint a human next to, a large building or a tree, the human's not going to be close in size to that object. Okay, so again, making sure that everything is balanced and has their proper proportional size. The next characteristic will be perspective. A perspective will show depth and realism. Okay, so this is what makes the painting 3D. Obviously, even if you were just to look in my background here, you can see me up front, and then obviously if you look farther back here behind me, the stuff begins to get smaller. Just think about if we were to paint, a hallway in the school. The farther away that the other classrooms get, the smaller they're going to be. That is showing depth and realism. That is the perspective, making sure everything looks three-dimensional and not flat and 2D like the medieval paintings used to look. Also, movement and lively colors. Okay, so again, the Renaissance will painting with what's called a fresco, and they'll have oil paints. The paintings are going to kind of pop more than the medieval paintings would, which were usually kind of dull. Then also movement, okay, being able to show proper movement of human bodies as well. So like I just said, these Renaissance paintings are able to, they look better, they look aesthetically more pleasing than the medieval ones do because of these new materials. You have oil paint, which allows the painters to work slower because these paints dry slower, and therefore you can obtain more lifelike effects. You also have fresco, which is when paint was combined with wet plaster, helped the painting last a little bit longer as well. Okay, so those are the two new materials. So what I want to do now is I want to take a look here at some paintings, and then I'll give you a second here to decide if this is Middle Age or Renaissance. If you're to look at this painting right here, okay, would this be a Middle Age or Renaissance painting? Okay, if you said Middle Age painting, you'd be correct because again, if you look here, it is flat. That should be one of the first things that jumps out to you. Okay, it's not three-dimensional. They have rather dull colors. For the most part, their faces kind of look the same. They don't really look like individuals, and also they are not proportionate. If you take a look at the angels, I mean, you have Jesus hanging on the cross here. He's off the ground, a foot or two. Yet these angels are almost as tall as him. Okay, so again, not proportionate like we would have seen in a Renaissance painting. Okay, and let's compare that to this one here. So if you take a look at this one, obviously this one should jump out. This is a Renaissance painting. So if we look at them side by side, it's kind of the same idea here. You have the Holy Trinity, but you have Jesus hanging off on the cross, yet these people are nowhere near the height of Jesus, as you can see over in the ones on the left. You should also see that this one is flat compared to the three-dimensional look here, as you can see as you look back into the painting. You have more vibrant colors here. You have details in the pillars and in the human body as well. Another value that we forgot to talk about that I didn't have in the PowerPoint there is Greco-Roman inspiration, or ancient Greek or Rome inspiration. And you will see that in the pillars, where'd my mouse go? In the pillars or the archways as well. If you see that, that is Greco-Roman inspiration. Okay, you can write that down when we get to our web quest and stuff like that. Again, the whole idea of the Renaissance was to revert back to ancient Greek or Roman cultures. And if you see that in the building styles, even better. Okay, so let's take a look at another painting here. If you look at this one, okay, this painting, would this be medieval or Renaissance? Okay, this one's definitely from the Middle Ages. If you said Middle Ages, you guessed that correctly. Again, dull, flat. These guys have freakishly large heads compared to their body. They got large eyes. Definitely medieval. Michelangelo, The Creation of Man. Okay, if you look at this, you should be able to tell that this is a Renaissance painting. You can see the vibrant colors as well. Again, even though it is a religious painting, again, so it's not secular. Okay, we definitely know that, but it could still be a Renaissance painting, even if it has to deal with religion. Here you can see the details in the human body. You can see the muscle definition of Adam. God's got absolutely massive forearms over here. You can see in details in the fingers. The way that the stomach's protruding this way as well kind of shows the movement of the human body. You have balance and proportion. The people are in their proper size. Individualism, okay, each person looks different. And you can see the perspective as well. If we haven't mentioned that yet, it looks three-dimensional. Okay, so again, definitely a good example of a Renaissance painting. One of the most famous Renaissance paintings comes from Leonardo da Vinci, the Mona Lisa. Okay, so again, if you look here, the details and the folds, okay, of her clothing, you can see the uniqueness of her face. You can put individualism there if you wanted to. Perspective, three dimensions when you look into the background here. Maybe not as vibrant colors as, say, the creation of man, but still you can tell it is a Renaissance painting. School of Athens. This, I would say, is the perfect example of a Renaissance painting because it has absolutely everything that you need for the values and characteristics. If we look at the values first, we have secularism. Okay, it's got nothing to do with religion, nothing to do with the church. Greco-Roman inspiration. Obviously, it's titled the School of Athens. It took place in Athens, Greece. You can see the archways and the pillars go on in the back. You can even see individualism here with each person. Okay, has an individual face. They look different. They are unique. Humanism. You have people writing. You have people reading. You have philosophers arguing. You got two philosophers here. So again, this is the perfect example of a Renaissance painting. You have the vibrant colors, the details you could see all throughout here as well. Balanced proportion. People are their proper size. Their perspective is three-dimensional. So again, perfect example of a Renaissance painting. Then finally, we got Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper. Now, da Vinci was messing around with different paints during this painting. So again, this one's kind of more faded than the other ones. But when it was originally painted, it definitely had the vibrant colors. You could see the individualism here, okay, with each person's face. They all look different. You have different reactions going on here as well. You have perspective going on into the back as it gets smaller. Again, just a perfect example of a Renaissance painting. Okay, so what I'll do is I will post some more stuff with the Renaissance artwork. I'll put the web quest on there. It'll kind of help you go through and to decipher what's a Renaissance painting. You'll kind of tell me why. And then that way you can kind of see, if we are understanding this or not. So as always, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. Otherwise, just keep your eye on Google Classroom.